Started. Okay. Oh, well, Gavi, I'm telling you, it's an exciting day. There we go. Josh is, for some reason, his video is off. It's good to know that he's there. Okay. So I'd like to use this time for finishing up Ezrat Hashem Perek Gimel so that we can have all your delicious ha'arot that you've been sending in. It's very exciting for Perek Dalet and Mirz Hashem next week. And we had gotten up to Pasuk Yud Gimel last time. The last thing we learned was about the Shalom ben Alochech, Sar Chatzi Pelach Yerushalayim, who v'notav. I had to run out tomorrow. I think we're right in the middle really of that Pasuk. And I'm not sure exactly. These are very interesting names. Shalom ben Alochech. I don't know what Alochech is, but it's very possible that it was somebody who knew how to be Melachesh ala Makkah. And so he was like a healer. It would be an Adam Chashuv. And because it would be like doctor, you know. So he was Sar Chatzi Pelach Yerushalayim. We saw that there were many of the places that we have, there are Chatzi Pelachs. The large areas had two separate people that were in charge of them. Hu Ubnotav, which the simple meaning of Ubnotav most learn is the idea of the Banot Yerushalayim, like it mentions in the Shir HaShirim. So it means Banot Yerushalayim, means over there the suburbs, basically, which is a word that we use today as well. So it means that there were like, some Rishonim say, like, as other big cities, there were Banot Yerushalayim, and he and suburbs of that area, the Chatzi Pelach Yerushalayim, participated. Others learn that means Mamish Kipshuto, which has a certain panache to it, which is that he didn't have any sons, so he had his daughters helping him, which would be really very beautiful. And that even the women were Yotze in order to build the Chomot Yerushalayim. But no, it's a little hard to believe, but maybe. And then we get to, so this means basically that if he was a continuation from the previous one, and he went all the way to Shar Hagai. Now the Migdal HaTanurim was basically at the corner of the area that we call today the Migdal David, which is not the Migdal David that's referred to around here, but what we call Migdal David, right at the corner over there, was the Migdal HaTanurim, basically. And if that's the case, then since in the next pasuk it says at Shar Hagai Hachazik Chanun, so that would mean that basically the entire wall, all along the side, the western wall, from what is today Migdal David, and continuing all the way down to what today this Shar Hagai is, no longer exists. There's no wall there. But that would probably be, according to whatever maps have been drawn from the time, would probably be right around the place where you come down the snake trail outside of Yerushalayim and you hit the corner where you turn into the guy coming along that wall. So at the bottom of that path, as you come into Gei Ben Hinnom from the Pope's Road on top, which runs along the wall that is today, but was actually included within the wall at the time, that continued on much lower. If you take a look today, the wall that goes around where Schindler, from Schindler's List, is buried, that wall contains all of that area. It comes out basically at the end of the road, which at that time was Shar Hagai, because that was Gei Ben Hinnom right there. And because the wall went all the way down there near Brechat HaSultan, right across the road from Brechat HaSultan, that was the Shar. So that would mean that he had built a tremendous amount of wall, because he did the entire western wall. And that's not such a pella, because we find from Shar Hagai in the next pasuk there it even tells us how long the building was. It's a tremendously long building, and Elefama, that means that you're talking about half a kilometer, more even, according to some shitas, right? So that's quite a lot of building for just one of these groups to do. And so it says Sha'ar Hagai itself, and plus the entire half a kilometer of the wall until Shara Hashbot was built at Sha'ar Hagai Hechazik Chanun and Yoshvei Zanoach. Zanoach, we know where that is because it's near Beit Shemesh, and there's even a yeshiva in Zanoach. And the Hema Banuhu Vayamidu Daltotav Manulav Uvrichav. So it means they put a lot of effort into the Sha'ar Hagai area. They built a roof over it, turned it into a really fancy gate. The Elefama B'choma at Sha'ar Hashpot, which is often we find that we drop the olive in the language of the Yerushalmi, or the language of the Aramaic type Hebrew at the time, and just like Israelis do today, they drop the olive. So Sha'ar Hashpot, and the Ma'aser Sha'ar Hashpot obviously is not the most of the Choshev Sha'arim, so it's possible that they Bedavka weren't makbid dropping the Chashivas from the Sha'ar, which we often find that we want to show that something is in a state of non-perfection, we'll drop a letter like Yerushalayim, instead of Yerushalayim. So that means the entire area from that corner all the way to where Sha'ar Hashpot was in those days. Today, Sha'ar Hashpot is inside of what was then the city, because remember that the current wall that was built by Suleiman really does not contain any of the area of Ir David, and it stops on the outside of the main part of the city at the time. And that Sha'ar Hashpot there would be smack bang in the middle of town at that time. So the Sha'ar Hashpot at that time appears to have been all the way at the bottom, almost at the corner, at the valley comes out at the edge of Ir David. If you ever looked at Ir David from the Tayelet, where you get a beautiful view of the entire elevations and the topography of the Ir, you can see very, very clearly at the edge to your left, as you're looking towards the city, there is a drop, and that drop into the valley was where they had the Sha'ar Hashpot coming out, underneath the area where the water was from the waterways that had been cut by Chizkiyahu and so on, which we're going to get to now when we start moving up the wall along the eastern side, going all the way up to the north. So we're basically going to be coming back around now and get close to the Mokum, the Beis HaMikdash again, and that's why it's going to turn once again. Once we make that turn, it's going to turn again into Leviim and Kohanim, because as we saw before, the area around the Beis HaMikdash was given specifically to the Mishamshei HaMikdash to work on. So Sha'ar Hashpot itself was Hichzik Malkia ben Rechav. This is like this is beautiful, because obviously this is a reference to Yonadav ben Rechav's family that Yirmiyahu had held up as the Kadosh Baruch Hu told him to make them a symbol of the loyalty. So Malkia ben Rechav, who was the Sar Pel of Beit HaKerem, which could be either modern day Beit HaKerem or modern day Ein Kerem, which is all the way like the furthermost stretch of Yerushalayim into what is today Tzomet Kerem, where you're coming down from the mountains of Har Yehuda down into Yerushalayim. Hu Yivnenu, he took this upon himself, apparently to stress on Hu Yivnenu, that the Ben Rechav took it individually, and it doesn't say, everywhere else it says that the other people came along, the Pelach came along. Here it doesn't say. It stresses Hu Yivnenu personally. Vayamid al totav manu lav uvrichav. And then we come up to the Sha'ar Ayin. Now the Sha'ar Ayin we had earlier, and we talked about probably the Lashon of Ayin, of course, is the Ein Hamayim, Alein Hamayim. So this must have been the area around the place where the water, we're going to get up to the Shar Hamayim later, so that was the place we know the Gemara Sukkah says, where they would bring in the water for into the Beis Hamikdash on Sukkot for the Nisach Hamayim. So this Shar Ha'ayin was probably the lower gate where they had the place where people would come and would bring water into the city themselves until the time that Chizkiyahu made the water tunnel, which you can cross today if you don't mind getting wet. You can go into that tunnel, you can go straight through it and come out the other side, and then you'll be in the underground passageway, which made the Shar Ha'ayin no longer necessary. And so that was built by Shalun, or not built, but Mechuzak, by Shalun ben Kol Chozeh. It's a very beautiful name. Kol Chozeh was actually we're going to meet them later on, and that was the earliest Yehuda family to settle in Yerushalayim. They were those. Remember that the Malbim was Machalek in the beginning of the Sefer between those that had been here from before and those that had come later with Ezra, and he's medayik in the pasuk that only some of the ones that come later, they was the ones that were in terrible shape. So these were some of the earlier families, and they were the ones that built this area, and that's from the mitzvah. So this is another reference to people who were outside of Yerushalayim, the Yatalalenu. Yatalalenu is a lashon of sail, right, in Aramaic. So the sukkah is called the metalalta in Aramaic. So it means they put up the sukkah, they put up the roof. V'yamidu totav manulav uvrichav. It's interesting that we would use different lashonas for what it is that you do to the various sha'arim. How do you call the roofing? Maybe it was a different type of roofing. Maybe the lashon of Yitalalenu really means it was sort of a shading kind of thing instead of being a solid roof. So there was no maziva on it at all, because it's the only place that we've seen that lashon here of the sha'arim. The Eit Chomat Brechat HaShelach, I'm assuming, is the Brechat HaShiluach, which was the name of the water, Legan HaMelech, and that was the area that had indeed, which was recently discovered actually near David. The Gan HaMelech was the place where they had all of the beautiful plants from the water that had been brought in. The Ad HaMa'alot HaYordot Me'ir David, and this went all the way up to the stairs which come down from Ir David to the Shiloach. Those stairs you can still walk on. They're exactly the way they were. Nothing has changed, and it's easy to get to if you don't mind the Arabs in the area. Bring along Neshek, and everything will be fine. Which we're getting to the Shar HaNesek anyway, so I might as well start here. Acharav echaziku halavim. So I'm sorry, I skipped here. Acharav echazik Nechemya ben Azbuk sar chatzipelach Beit Sur. Beit Sur, we know where that is also because there's actually a monument there that still that still exists. Not very much, but it's identified there as the name of the place is still called Beit Sur in Arabic. Ad neged kivrei David ad habrecha ha'asuya. So until the place where the Gvorim of Malchus Beis David were and the artificial lake. The Brecha Ha'asuya means it was created artificially. The Ad Beit HaGiborim. The Beit HaGiborim, that is probably the actual place that was called Migdal David. Because by Migdal David, it mentions in Shir HaShirim, Migdal David Savarech, and the Migdal David, it says, Kol Shiltei HaGiborim. So all the Giborim had their things hanging there, had their marks hanging there. So it could be. Maybe that's also a reference not to the Beis HaMikdash, which is the Midrashic meaning, but really a place that they had by that name. That was called the Beit HaGiborim. So from this point on, we start getting into the Leviim and the Kohanim, because we're coming back up to the area of the closer to the Har HaBayit. And you will recall that The structure, if you remember, is Ir David. If you take a look at your map again, Ir David, the original Ir David, comes down as almost a triangle, and it starts at the place which just this year was discovered at last. Nobody ever could understand what protected the northern wall of Ir David. There was just an assumption that there was some kind of castle, some kind of fortification there, and nobody ever realized what they were looking at. And in fact, there was massive fortifications. Nobody understood that it was part of the actual topography. It was built into the topography, and they're just starting to take away all of the things that have fallen in there to make it clear what's what. And Mamish this year, so that comes all the way up to the bottom of the Harabayit. Then starts the Harabayit, the Choma Hadromit of the Harabayit, with stairs going up to the Harabayit from the Ophel, which is the high area above Ir David. So that was a very chashva area where the Malchus and the Giborim were, and so that area was given to the Leviim apparently. Acharav Echezika Leviim, Rechum Ben Bani. Ben Bani is a lashon of Binyan itself, maybe relates to Benayahu. Ayado Echezik Chashavia, Sar Chatzipelach Ki'ila, Lepilcho. That he did as a representative of his entire pelach. So that means everybody was helping him, not like the Bnei Recha. Acharav Yechaziku Achehem, meaning Achehem HaLaviim. And this is Bavai Ben. This Bavai, it's later on, Ben Chenadad is called Binui. So it could be that it's just, a chiluf of osios, because since we had Ben Bani, so maybe they wanted to clarify that there's somebody else. Sar Chatzi Pelach Ki'ila. Vayachazek Ayado Ezer Ben Yeshua Sar HaMitzpah. This too is from a completely different area, from outside of Yerushalayim. Midah Shenit, and this was the Midah Shenit. This is clearly a real Midah Shenit. Remember last time in the first mention of Midah Shenit, there was no Midah Rishonah. And there's three places where it says Midah Shenit, and it doesn't give us a Midah Rishonah. So because of that, Rashi understood that Midah Shenit just means similar to. In other words, the two people had basically the exact amount of space. So when it describes the first part, so there's Midah Shenit, which was the equivalent, is this. And as we mentioned last week, it's very difficult to believe that, because in almost all of the places, Midah Shenit really means Midah Shenit. It can't be a coincidence that every place it says Midah Shenit, except for three places, we know where the Midah Rishonah was. And the way we understood it was that apparently it was Bedavka that Nechemya didn't want there to be a particular little piece that was shayach to every person, and that would mean that they don't have a sense of being involved in the entirety. And he Bedavka split it so that half of their efforts were in one location, half their efforts were in another location, so that everybody could feel very much involved in the entirety. So if that's the case, then it could be that the three places where we don't have the first reference, as obviously it's very strange to say Midah Shenit if we don't know where the Midah Rishonah was. The simple explanation is that the names of the people that we're giving over here were people that were fundamentally the Achroim. And there might have been, dozens and dozens of people that worked with each of the individuals that we list. We're listing the leaders. So it could be that Midah Shenit is an indication that the person that we're talking about, if we didn't hear about a Midah Rishonah, that you should know that that person was very heavily involved already in one of the other parts, but wasn't mentioned because he wasn't the main guy. We only mentioned the main guy who's in charge of the whole binyan, like the supervisor and the one who takes responsibility. But that Lamaisa, this was not the only thing that he did. He was, whoever it is, we say Midah Shenit, without knowing a name for the Midah Rishonah, it's just telling us, listen, you don't have to know where it was, because obviously each part has a special shaykhus to the one who's responsible. But in terms of the chashivas of the individual, you should know that even though this is the only one that we're listing with his name, Lamais, in terms of the effort that he put in, this was his midah sheni. In this case, huh?
The reason that Nechemya doesn't want to mention that wanted them to be mixed up with everyone and assigning a particular place here and a particular place there in order to get everyone. That would be why we don't need to know exactly where this person was, because it's just a sense of.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, sure. That's stronger. So here, in this case, by the Sarah Mitzvah, where he was in charge of that area of the Mitzvah, so in Binyamin, so that I know already because we had before we mentioned the Mitzvah, right, just a few psukim ago. So you take a look back to Pasuk Zayin. We have V'hamitzvah, Shegivon V'hamitzvah. So there we can trace it, you know. So it makes sense that this was the Midah Sheni. I mean, it's already mentioned that there were people there from Mitzvah. It means that it was this same group apparently. So that even strengthens the assumption that where it says Midah Sheni, it doesn't have to be the same name. But we know that these were the Anshe HaMitzvah. And this was the place where it was the Alot HaNeshek. So this was the place where they would bring, one meaning is literally Alot HaNeshek. This was the place where they would bring in the weapons, or I guess they had a weapon, could be that a weapons storage depot there, or it could mean that the Beit HaNeshek is used in the lashon of kissing. In other words, the corner where the two sides kiss. So this would be the edge again. It'd be the same idea of midah shenit min hamikzoa at petach beit el yashiva kohen gadol. That's where it started from. It was the opening, was the beit el yashiv, but it wasn't his home. He was the one that took responsibility, if you recall, for the first building out in the two directions. So now we get to the home of beit el yashiv, and acharav echazik meremot ben Uriah ben Akotz midah shenit, and once again midah shenit is really midah shenit because all the way back at the beginning of the parak, it mentioned beferish exactly. We spoke about it there. Al yadam pasuk daled al yadam echazik meremot ben Uriah ben Akotz. So we know exactly where the midah rishona was, word for word, father's name, son's name. It's clear that this midah shenit means exactly what it's saying. This went mipetach beit el yashiv. Tachlit Beit El Yashiv, from the beginning of the Beit El Yashiv estate until the end. So these were Leviim. After that came the Kohanim, were the Anshe HaKikar, probably meaning the Kikar HaYarden, and that was the area. It could be since Shlomo HaMelech had made a lot of the copper that was used in the Beis HaMikdash there. It could be that was a place that they continued to work. Binyamin v'chashuv neged beitam. So these were all Kohanim, undoubtedly. And after them was Azariah ben Maaseah ben Ananya etzel beito. So here already we're getting to small areas, little areas. Every Kohen or every Levi that was there built Keneged his own home. And so we saw, remember we mentioned earlier that Chenadad had a son called Bavai, was mentioned before. And over here we find it's Binui ben Chenadad, and it says Midah Shenit. So it makes sense that the Bavai ben Chenadad that we mentioned earlier was the Midah Rishonah. And this is the Midah Shenit. And if that's the case, it could be that it's one of those names that they express in different ways. Mi Beit Azariah ad hamikzoa va'ad hapina. So ad hamikzoa means it was all the way up to the corner. This was in the north, and this was the pina. Pina means the mokum that was most choshev, and indeed we know that the pasuk says in Divrei Hayamim that the Sha'ar HaPinah was the place where Uziyahu had built his Migdalim. So there were obviously very chashuva fortifications there, and that's called Arapina. Palal ben Uzai mineged hamiktsua והמגדל היוצא מבית המלך העליון אשר לחצר המטרה אחריו בדיה ben Parosh. So we know that Shlomo HaMelech had built a palace, and that, as it says in Malachim, that was built near the Beis HaMikdash itself. So that was probably what we call Ha'elyon, as opposed to the Beis HaMelech that had been built by David HaMelech. This is like the place that is all the way up on top. It's near the Beis HaMikdash itself. We know the Chatzar HaMatara, that was the place where they used to keep prisoners, Chashva prisoners. As we know, some very sad stories about the Chatzar HaMatara. And that was part of the Mokum where the Malachim were. And like it says by Paro, Mokom Asher Asirei HaMelech Hayu Asurim, where Yosef HaTzadik was put. So the Chatzar HaMatara was that equivalent at the time of Shlomo HaMelech, and it was still called, apparently, still in use on some level. And that was the Netinim. They were Yoshvim Ba'ofa. So as we said, the Ofa was just discovered. The actual outlines of the major fortifications and walls that were on the north of Ir David, and that was, for some reason, and I would love to know what the secret is, that it was Dafka the Netinim, which we know, I mean, the Netinim did not have the best reputation. They were the ones that had lied, basically, about where they came from, and Klal Yisrael was stuck with them and made a shvua, and they were given over to be water drawers, and it's like we always put together Netin v'Mamzer. It's like very low class, and for some reason at this point, it could be, I don't know, but it certainly wouldn't be strange to think that in the same way that the Kutim were given chashiva specifically in order to make the Jews and the Chashuvim feel that they were second-rate by giving over to the people like Sanballat, who weren't Jewish, they were basically Samaritans, they were Kutim. He's called a Shomrani. Maybe they Bedafka gave over to Netinim. That's one possibility. The other possibility is, look, we know that the Netinim as Avadim, we know that the Avdei Shlomo, as the Gemara tells us, became very, very highfalutin and took a lot of advantage of their position as being the Avodim of the Melech, and it was considered to be very chashiv, the fact that they were Avodim. And the fact is that, till today in Addis Ababa, I mean, the most chashiva families and the strong belief of the chashivas of their religion and their temples is that they were built by Avdei Shlomo. That's what they say about themselves. That's their chashivas, is that they were Avdei Shlomo. That's highly Selassie, and it's unbelievable how they take this to be the biggest covet. And Mamish Adayom. And it could be that these were the Netinim. So the Netinim that were being Yoshev Ba'ofa, which was Mamish, the strongest area to the south of the Arabite, those Netinim, they built the wall all the way up to the Shar HaMayim, together with the Migdal HaYotzei, and that was probably the fortifications that were extended out of the wall from the Beis HaMelech, which needed, of course, special fortifications, so that the Netinim were able to build. I mean, the sense of the openness to everybody here, and the achdus that Nechemya created, which was really the only ones that weren't part of that achdus were indeed the Kutim, the Shomronim, and that stresses very much the feeling of you're either on our side or you're against us. And if you aren't fully, your lave is not fully with us, then in the end it comes out that you just want to hurt. And that's basically what we find at the end of the parak that's coming up. Me'al shar hasusim. Sorry, acharav yichziku atikoim midah shenit, and you'll remember This again is a real midah shenit, because we met those tekoim earlier, and it said it beferish back at the beginning. That was the first that we had found. It's back in Pasuk Hey, and that was right after Ben Akutz, and we found Al Yad Amich Ziko HaTekoim. Va'adireihem lo eviu tzavaram ba'avodat adonenehem. You remember the machlokes about what that meant. So here once again we find the tekoim, and it's a real midah shenit. As you can see, this midah shenit is pretty persuasive that it means exactly what it says. I mean, it can't be that every single time it mentions it, it's mamish a quote of something before. So they took the entire area, Meneged HaMigdal HaGadol HaYotzei, V'ad Chomat HaOfel. Then Me'al Shar HaSusim, the Shar HaSusim was probably connected to the Beis HaMelech, because we know that Shlomo HaMelech had the Arvot Susim. This is one of the tainas on him, that he was so makbid on and that he wasn't makbid sufficiently on the posuk of Lo Yarbelo Susim either. And so Allah Shar HaSusim, each one of the Kohanim, even the little guys, took at least responsibility for the area of the wall that was Neged Beito. And Acharav Echazik Tzadok ben Imer Neged Beito, and Imer, of course, is the name of the Choshev Mishpachat of the Kuna, which we keep in the Mishmarot. Acharav Echazik Shemaya ben Shechanya Shomer Sha'ar HaMizrach. Apparently he was the one. Remember that the Shmira is a real, it's not just a political thing. The Shmira is a mitzvah, d'oraisa, that you have to be shomer, the Migdash. And the Mishnah goes through all of the different places where there was a Shmira. So when you're talking about the Shomer Shar HaMizrach, that was a very choshev job. And it's like the, like the Royal Guards in England. Acharav, it should say, it's Acharai, dropped above, Yechazik Chananya ben Shalemya, V'chanun ben Salaf, Hashishi, Midah Shenina. We hear too, we had that Lashon before. And many suggest Hashishi means the sixth son of, which is a little weird. Ben Salaf Hashishi, the number 6 son. I mean, listen, I'm familiar with Charlie Chang and, number 1 son and everything, but number 6 son is a funny way of referring to somebody. So it's shaykh, it's very shaykh. The same way we had the references, we're going to have more references to the Tzorfim and the Rochlim. Maybe Hashishi, some suggest, is a lashon of shayish. Hashishi, the guy who works with marble, and obviously that would be a very choshev thing, So the shayish was a very important part of the binyan of the Beis Hamikdash. Could be that it's a reference to that. And Achrav Yechzik Meshulam ben Berechia neged Nishkato. Lashon Nishka is interchangeable with Lishka. We find that often. And he apparently had a lishka in the Harabayat itself. So that was his famous lishka. What he was and what the lishka was, it was lishkas. What do we know the lishkas around the Harabayat? I don't know what it was. I don't know if anybody has a riot what it was. Acharav Yechazik Malkia ben Hatzorfim. Again, there's a lot of dropped letters to Afghan these psukim. I don't know why. Ad Beitan and Tinim va'Rochalim. So here we have once again a reference to the Rochlim and the Tzorfim, which we talked about before. Neged Shar HaMivkad, which may be the place where they would bring all the Kohanim out, and we know that before going in, everybody gathered together, and they split into 2 groups, and they went around the Harabayit and the Azores. Could be that that's the Mifkad, the place where we make sure that everybody gathers before we go in. The Ad Aliyat HaPinah, the road that leads up to the top. Uvein Aliyat HaPinah l'Shar HaTzon, when we're back again to the Shar HaTzon, where the Tzon came into the Beis HaMikdash, Ichziko HaTzorfim v'Harochalim, and we have now made a complete circle of Yerushalayim, starting from the area of the Kohanim and the Shar HaTzon, going up north to the corner, going along the northern side all the way from east to west, then coming down from there, from the Shar down to Shar Hagai, and that was the entire west, and then going from Shar Hagai all the way to Shara Hashpot, which was almost the entire south, and then turning up north again and coming back up until we came back to the Shara Tzon into the corner. So now we've done a complete circuit of Yerushalayim. Some of the places you'll notice are included within places that we mentioned earlier, apparently because there were places that were left, like things that were Neged Lishkato or Neged Beito. So even though we spoke about the general area being covered by someone or another in the first psukim, and now we're back to the same area, and all of a sudden somebody else is building, and there isn't another area where they could have built, could be that it was little places now were given over to those that were mamish living there. So once he heard that we were actually building the Choma, now we're going to see in a few psukim later that the purpose of these comments, as silly as they sound, was to make the builders feel like garbage. So in other words, the point of it was psychological warfare. Before they actually planned on attacking the Jews, because remember, I mean, these guys were claiming all along, according to Ralbag, to themselves as well, not just Klapei Chutz, that they were desperately interested in building Yerushalayim and in Kvot Shamayim. And so, first of all, there's a gradual change in them in which they come to view the Jews as the enemies. Whereas first they claimed that all they want to do is help, and they want to be part of it. And this was the whole sugya in the Gemara that says you can't allow that because then they can take over and they can actually be ma'akev, and the more dependent you become on them, the more you show them that you need them, the more dangerous they become to you. And indeed, it's exactly what we see happens over here. So Sanballat is extremely angry. So he laughs at them, and obviously the laughing was exaggerated and was meant to be overheard. And that's what Nechemya mentions later when he davens to Hashem. And he says beferish in his tefillah that the whole point of their talking was only in order to break our spirit. So he is himself a Shomroni, remember. And he was a very chashuv Shomroni. There is mentions that are still around in walls and seals and so on of Sanballat Shomrani. So this is not some small guy. And the same thing is true of as we saw before, of Tuvia Amoni. There's like a whole palace of Tuvia Amoni, a burial place. So anyway, when he hears that, he says, "Vayomer lefnei achav v'chel Shomron." So now, for the first time, he's already talking to the Chel Shomron. And we'll see, of course, in the next parak, this becomes a lot more dangerous than just psychological warfare very shortly. What the heck do these low-class, weak people, what do they think they're doing? I mean, what they really think that they're going to build it all the way up to the point of the Azivah? What they're going to actually put a top on this wall? They think to make a party when this thing is finished. What they're going to actually be able to keep to a schedule, and they're going to finish on a particular day. And Bichlal, what do they think? This city is dead. They're going to take, I mean, if they were bringing in new building materials, and they had some trucks coming in and so on, I'd be more impressed. They're taking a bunch of dirt and old stones which are already burnt. You can't use stones that have been destroyed and burnt and expect them to be able to protect the city and to provide something that would be a new nice wall. It's a piece of garbage. What do they think they're doing? It's interesting. This is because we saw before, the Tosfos Reed points out the usage of the word avanim, that deep down he has the sense that the stones are alive, that the stones were alive, and Bedavka uses that sense of, will he bring them back to life? And the Tosfos Reed compares it to later on, where we use the word of the Allah Turufa, that there's actually Altar Ruka Lechomot Yerushalayim, the beginning of Perek Dalet, is also a lotion of healing, of a skin that is putting out a scab over a wound, and it's starting to heal underneath, which is also a biological, living kind of process. So whether this is something that is actually an indication of, as some of the Rishonim suggested, that this guy really did have feelings, and he thought that he was the one that should have been doing all of these things. You know, we find exactly the same thing with Bilam HaRasha. You know, Bilam HaRasha is convinced that like he's the guy that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is speaking to, and so they actually felt that these people were not loyal, and they're the ones that are loyal. And Tuvia Amoni is at slow, Vayomer, you know, and this was all said aloud so that the builder should hear it. Whatever they think they're doing, it is so useless. Kama shereim bonim, im yaleh shu'al ufaratz chomat avneihem. And we know shu'al is often shu'alim ketanim, mechablim karamim. The shu'alim ilchubo. The shu'al, the fox, is used as, because fox live in these little, little holes in walls. And, no, that's the Alexander McCall Smith, as a character that has a little fox living in the wall around her garden. Mr. Fox, she calls him. So the fox has a tendency to, in the end, make holes through these walls. They'll just go straight through. This is totally useless. So this is what everything that we did meant to them. And here he turns to his ongoing tefillah, the way we understand it, is that he's always, in a sense, omed b'fnei Hashem. And he's continuing his tefillah. Shema Eloheinu, ki hayinu vuzah, yashev cherpatam al rosham. Because his whole point, remember, was the cherpa gedolah and the busha of the Am and the walls of Yerushalayim. This was the very first thing that he hears that causes him to go into the Melech, and causes him in the end to come back and try to do this. And the fact that this cherpa and this busha continues to be spouted by these people who look at Am Yisrael in this way and have made them indeed feel that that's what they are, and has made the tikuma of Yisrael impossible because of the response and the belief that the way people look at us is the way that we actually are. And this is the weakest element of Yisrael, is when they respond to these kind of things. And this is exactly what's going on today. So many of these self-hating Jews who are persuaded that indeed everything that Klal Yisrael does is a busha and a cherpa and is racist and is evil and is usurping and is robbing. And so it's the same thing. That feeling that he says over here, I think every one of us feels exactly like this. The chutzpah of these French, the chutzpah of the bastard in charge of the United Nations, the chutzpah of all of these people with the rotten lashon hara that they speak, and the bizoyin in which they're not mechabed, the am that is more mechubed than in their worst parts than anything that these other people do, the ones who are most machshiv the lives of others. It's just beyond belief. And the pain of it, and that's mamish why the Novi has to say it's not only the weapons, but it's the kol lashon that speaks against you. Tarshir will become seen as something evil. That's something that everybody desires so deeply, because of the feelings of how much it has impacted us, and that it's made our tekuma impossible. You see the pain with which Nechemya keeps relating to this. Ribbono Shel Olam, listen to them. Hashem cherpatam rosham, these disgusting people. Utneim levizah be'eretz shivya halavai. They should be, all of these disgusting Europeans, they should be thrown out into the streets by the very Muslims that they're bringing in there, that they tolerate and that they believe all their lashon hara about Yisrael. V'al techas al avonam. Don't cover it, because that's what we do. We keep covering. We keep being malamet schus. Don't cover it anymore. Don't cover the chatatam milfanecha al timacheh. Don't ever wipe it out, because every word that they said, ki ichisu l'neged habonim. They did all of this just to make our hearts broken, so that we should. They did it right there in front of the Bonim, so that they should lose faith. And instead, vanivne et hachoma, vatikasher kol hachoma ad chetzia, vayilev la'am la'asot. So again, I think the nicest way to understand this is not that this is going back to the point where they had only had half of the city built, but that this means we finished the entire wall. Ad chetzia means ad chetzi gova, and then we would come back and continue building, which makes a heck of a lot of sense. You don't build all the way. First, you get a basic protection in place, and then you strengthen it by making it taller and thicker. And so it's okay. So we managed to do half of what we needed to do. That doesn't mean there were any pretzot that was left. And because of that, once you get to that point, then you start believing in your project. And the people responded from the depths of their heart, vayilev la'am la'asot, despite everything that these guys threw at us. Okay, so we finally get through Perek Gimel with a lot of background that we had to work out what the point is and what's going on over here and why this is so important, and recognize that it's exactly what we do. It's exactly what every person has to recognize all of those simple things, all of that mikra, all of that mishnah, and everything that's built afterwards. You could look back and say, okay, but that was like so, it didn't really mean anything. It was just the very beginnings. If you just have that, you don't have anything. It's all very nice. But everything is made on those yesedes, and the chas v'sholom looking at these prokim without that understanding is the way we understood it, is looking at it through the eyes of Sanballat. And that's the entire idea over here, to learn to see things through the eyes of Nechemya, and to recognize to what extent this is our contemporary situation. Obviously, things much, much more sophisticated, but then again, the Sina of the Sanballats of our day is much more sophisticated also. It's frightening, the level of sophistication and how it is that they persuade people of this, and the impact that it makes on Yisrael. The entire political parties that are built on being Sanballat is just beyond belief. These are serious, real issues that in learning to deal with it through Nechemya, we can actually learn to achieve a Geula B'Zmanenu. I'm really sorry for holding you so much tonight, but I just couldn't stand putting it off yet another week. So I'm glad that it seems that most people were able to stay, Baruch Hashem. Thank you so much for your patience. And onward and upwards. Ad Apina. Laila Tov, everyone.
Good night, Jimmy.